Senate leader and the former Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Godswill Akpabio, by the APC for the position of the President of the Senate in the 10th National Assembly.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. So, as expected, there's now conflict with regards to the proposed sharing of the 4 presiding offices in the National Assembly. Now, what has transpired is that the 4 offices have been zoned to specific individuals. Now, that has not always been the case. What would normally transpire, what we will normally see is we will be told that a particular office has been zoned to a particular geopolitical zone. And then any individual from that zone who can skillfully gets the office. Now, Mr. Akpabio, who is the former governor of Akwa Ibom and also a serving senator, has been tipped to become the next Senate president. And expectedly, the other aspirants are not happy about it. And in the sharing of the offices, for some strange reason, the North Central Zone did not get any of the offices. So there's 6 geopolitical zones, but there are only 4 offices. Now, for obvious reasons, because the president-elect is from the Southwest was out of the equation. So that left 5 geopolitical zones to scramble for 4 offices. But it would appear the Northwest got 2 offices. So it's a big conflict, and the National Working Committee of the APC has indicated that more discussions need to take place. And we may see a reshuffling of the cards, and some individuals may be dropped for party unity to be maintained. And it would not be surprising to see or hear that the president-elect reaches out to some of these individuals and persuades them or encourages them to forego their ambitions so that peace can reign in the party. But there's nothing untoward about this. It's still early days, and remember that they don't come into office until the 29th of May, and even then, we should expect to see a new leadership in the National Assembly from the first week of June. So it's still early days, and we will see as further developments unfold where we're headed with the potential new leadership of the National Assembly.
All right, David, do you have any thoughts on this particular story again?
Just one word, the word that is the bane of Nigerian political and economic life: sharing. It's not about merit. It's not about, I understand, geopolitical zoning and all that, but I always hear that word sharing of offices, of resources, of this. We don't talk about sharing responsibility or sharing the responsibility for creating revenue. I just wish we had another paradigm through which we saw national life. But like Mr. C said, it's them who are discussing. You in your seat on your car right now will have absolutely no direct benefit whoever gets the office. So largely, it is utterly irrelevant to you unless you are one of the senators or National Assembly members. Take heart, go to work, focus on what matters to you.
The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 981. Let us know what your thoughts are. You can also tweet at Smooth981. And post a comment on the live stream as well. We're streaming live on YouTube, Smooth981 FM Lagos.
All right, let's check out our next story from the Daily Post. And yeah, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board JAMB has said it will provide the necessary support to ensure that Nigerian students evacuated from Sudan are integrated into the nation's universities.
I think it could be comforting for some of those students to know that there is a deliberate effort underway to try and see how they can continue their education, which was interrupted, of course, by this unfortunate events unfolding in Sudan. The thing that is curious to me is whether we actually go deeper to the root cause of having X number of students always choosing to go elsewhere to get their education. First of all, it is 100% legit to go and get your education anywhere you choose and can afford. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a situation conceivably where Nigerian educational institutions are the pride, the first choice of not just Nigerians, but other people. So these people coming back will be assessed, accommodated. They're talking about getting their transcript and all that. Maybe that might be a bit difficult to do under the current circumstances in Sudan, but eventually they are assuring us that anybody who gets integrated will have to spend the necessary time to make sure that their degrees are valid. And it's just good to hear JAM talking about this in this proactive manner. I'm sure that's a lot of comfort to both the students and potentially their parents.
Okay, so I just want to say something. I agree with everything Eddie has said. Now, remember that the Nigerian Universities Commission each year issues a quota for each school with regards to all of the courses each school offers. Now, that quota, they like it strictly adhered to, and where universities deliberately flout that quota or contravene the quota, you then find that in subsequent years, they reduce the number of students that can study. Now, yes, what has happened in Sudan is truly traumatic. Now, if there are plans to accommodate them, are you increasing that quota? And remember, that quota was arrived at given the number of lecturers vis-a-vis the number of students in each school. So where they are now willing to expand it, is it something that can be sustained long-term? So it's not just a question of a knee-jerk reaction to what has happened in Sudan, which by the way is good. And in the event a student cannot get the transcript on time, can the student truly and honestly have the peace of mind required to engage himself or herself in a course of study? So there are more questions to this, and I trust and want to believe that JAMB has averted its mind to these questions and will be proffering solutions.
On to the nation. The president yesterday urged the Senate to approve a fresh loan request of $800 million. Now, this loan is said or will be utilized to scale up the National Social Safety Net program and would be sourced from the World Bank.
Okay, thank you, Zibby. So this is the same $800 million loan the finance minister addressed Nigerians on, I think, about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago. And it's sad that they still continue to tell us that this loan will not be used for any development purposes, for any business that will yield more returns, but rather to provide a safety net for poor and vulnerable Nigerians. Now, we must understand the intricacies of this debt. Apparently, the agreement was signed last year. The president is only seeking for confirmation now. I would have thought that having signed last year, then there's no point coming to meet them. Because if he's coming to meet them, they're basically ratifying what has already been done. So where is the oversight in all of that if you've already signed the agreement? 2, this agreement is for 10 million vulnerable Nigerians, and it's at 5,000 naira a month, and they believe it will run for 6 months. Now, I want to read out what they say it's supposed to do. 1 sec.
Okay.
The
do you want me?
No, the 5,000 naira a month, believe this or not, I'm reading verbatim, I'm quoting the report, would stimulate activities in the informal sector, improve nutrition, health, education, and human capital development for beneficiary households. How is that even possible? How does 5,000 naira a month improve nutrition for a household?
Well, 5,000
naira a month,
right?
how does it stimulate activities in the informal sector? So take your local tailor, take your local hairdresser, take your local barber, take your local vulcanizer and the tire repair. How does 5,000 naira a month stimulate his business? They should stop insulting our collective intelligence. That is the simple truth. And then given the fact that we're going to have to repay this loan by 2051, we have a 4-year moratorium, and the amounts we have to pay each year that the loan runs. You've consistently trumpeted the fact that there will be savings from the end of the fuel subsidy regime. That may not be correct. There may be no savings. And even if there were savings, why are you unwilling and extremely reluctant to deploy this savings you seem to believe in to address the matter. And why was this not left for the incoming administration? Today is what? Today is the 11th of May. What is the rush in getting the loan now? The fuel subsidy regime hasn't ended. Why not leave the business of the loan and the application of these palliatives to the new incoming administration? What is the rush?
Maybe you're just looking ahead to the future.
May I? You know, oh, okay. Finish, please, Mr. C.
No, Abby,
Please.
please
Okay.
jump in.
Here's where I'm going. There's a very interesting coincidence, and I call it velocity. There's, loans are loans and all that. And you've actually talked about the continuous taking of loans. I'm just intrigued that the velocity suddenly towards the end of this administration, where we seem to be hearing bigger and bigger numbers. The other day it was fire trucks. Today it's $800 million. And you're saying you're doing this for the poorest of the poor. The poorest of the poor often don't have the technology. How are we going to ensure that they will get the money? It seems to be about one of the largest unaccountable transfers of money, because the poorest of the poor often don't have the smartphones and the BVNs and NINs and all those other things that you could use to track this. You're getting the money ostensibly for 10.2 million households and about 50 to 60 million people. But the whole 200 and something million of us are saddled with the repayments. I'm very troubled at this entire reliance on borrowing, when another story here will talk about how our revenues are not increasing. There had been an opportunity after calling the subsidy a scam. You enter the office, you called it under recovery, over this back forth, and now you are removing subsidy again. What subsidy, when you said it didn't exist before? I am completely confused by this approach. I'm a fuel subsidy removal hawk. I've always believed it since Jonathan tried to do it. But I feel we need to have a connection between that removal and the improvement in our lives. Nutrition, there is a lot of poverty. In fact, it is because of how much poverty there is in the country that you might be shocked at what 1, 2, 5,000 can do. I don't know about for a whole month, but just to assist people slightly. I feel there has been manifest, complete, and utter failure in the management of economic affairs by the Buhari administration. And this is just one more thing. Do you know that you can build a refinery for $10 million? They did it in Edo State. Even if you want modular refineries for between $100 and $200 million, you can build them. How about we use that money to improve our refining capacity, or put it into our electricity system so that these poor people can actually produce more things by themselves? This whole nature of dashing money out is not a sustainable solution in any sane economic, framework. It's a failure. It's a failed policy, but I bet you it shall be signed by the Senate. There's a reason why they had the name rubber stamp.
Okay, so let me quickly jump in. I was looking for these figures. Now, in addition to this loan, believe it or not, every year of the loan, we pay a commitment charge rate of 0.5% a year. Now, that comes to $4 million every single year. That is aside the principal repayment and interest. You then have a service charge of 0.75% on your withdrawn credit balance, as well as an interest charge rate of 1.25% on the withdrawn credit balance. So you have all these sums piling up year on year. You're not using it for any constructive, productive activity. And yet you want to saddle Nigerians with this burden until 2051. Something has to give at some point.
Let's go on some messages coming through. Dami from Ikorodu says, can the government demonstrate that it has a database of the poor people who are supposed to benefit from these schemes? And let's go on to Ajayi's message. Says the crisis brewing as a result of the adjusting of the presiding officers of the National Assembly, especially the Senate, is unnecessary distraction and can be resolved by simply scrapping the office of the Senate President. Dan Okuda says, why are the members of the National Assembly scrambling for political office? The over-bloated remuneration and allowances certainly is the driving force for this ambition. If they are coming to truly serve, then they shouldn't be desperate for these offices.
Yeah, that's right. You're still listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. It will continue shortly. Do stay with us. was a message here. Someone said, someone said, use the money to solve the problem that led to you wanting to use the money to help them out.
No. So the monies will not be enough.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I think we should pay for it. All right.
So anyway, the monies will not be enough. We are dealing with decades of incompetence, decades of stealing, decades of corruption, decades of embezzlement. So that sum of money will not be enough. You need to change the mindset of the Nigerians first. The average Nigerian, I'm sorry to say, is a criminal. And will
I object.
Positive thoughts.
So that's why when we go out, we behave ourselves, not because we want to. We know that the repercussions for bad behavior will be meted out immediately.
Consequences.
Yes, repercussions, consequences. You can't escape them. You wouldn't drive against traffic abroad.
No, you won't.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1, and you can be a part of the conversation this morning by sending in your messages on WhatsApp 0809 4440981. We're also streaming live on YouTube at Smooth 981 FM Lagos, and you can also tweet at Smooth 981 FM. We have Mr. C and AB with us as our analysts this morning. All right, let's move on to our next story here now from Ogun State. Ogun State government have revealed that it has empowered 200 girls in public secondary school with tear gas canisters to help them fight against sexual assaulters. Now, Zibby and I this morning looked at this and couldn't understand. Surely, there's a better way to have gone about this.
Now, this story was very heavy. I mean, it was focused on certain states in the Southwest, and it's all about empowering young girls and ladies to avoid, for self-defense, for all sorts of different sexual-related crimes. And, it paints a very dangerous story for what girls and women are going through in and around those. I think Oyo, Ogun, and Osun states are the focus of the study. It's good to equip people with the means, but I would always like to, side by side with that, equip the society with a better mindset that prevents some of these, alleged assaults. And they talk, it's a long, detailed story about what actually goes on in various states, what's predominant in each of these states. You should have a situation where children don't feel threatened going about their normal daily business in the company of any and everybody. And people also, but I worry when I hear stories like this because they're really heavy on what's going wrong to the girls, and they seem to be neglecting what may be going and happening to the boys. All children are valuable, and I am always on edge when I get a heavy story, all one-sided. There are also issues that affect male students, and those two should be given prominence. But it is a female gender-based organization carrying it out, and that can be expected. Let all our girls, women, people be safe. I just hope that none of these things will be used dangerously to harm, and rather than just defend yourselves. But again, if you go to the root cause and you prevent people from carrying out what would be assaults and crimes, then perhaps these things would just not even be necessary. That, in my mind, is where the emphasis should and ought to be.
Okay, thank you, Abi. I want to chip in with a few extra points, and I agree with everything you said. Now we're told about the tear gas canisters are being given. How about prosecuting the perpetrators of these acts? And a consistent prosecution, such that it sends a very strong message that you cannot do that. And if you do that, you will face the consequences. Two, if you read further in the story, they say students in secondary schools, or even, I dare say, primary school, are using diabolical means to get sexual favors from fellow students or from teachers. Now that speaks to a state of mind. And maybe they need to get psychologists into those areas to speak with the children. Because if it is not arrested now, and a few more years are allowed to go unhindered, we'll be dealing with something a lot more difficult to handle. So beyond the tear gas canisters, what is it that makes people want to instigate or inflict violence on the other gender? That needs to be addressed, because a tear gas canister will not solve the problem. It will solve the symptom. It will not solve the root cause. So that has to be looked at.
All right, let's go on to WhatsApp. Toye says, good morning. Can someone please explain the logic of borrowing for a safety net? Shouldn't the logic be to borrow to solve the problems that led to the situation of even having the necessity of this safety net? And OG says, government gives out money to keep people dependent on them. If you empower people to be masters of their own fate, how then can you manipulate them at other times? And Olabode says, when the subsidy is removed, price of fuel goes up permanently, but this palliative can only last the beneficiaries for a short while. I see no sense in getting the loan, even if it will be shared by uncorrupt angels. From Punch, a former Minister of Power, Saleh Maman, has been arrested and detained by the EFCC in connection with an alleged 22 billion naira fraud. Now, the former minister, who was minister under President Buhari, was detained at the EFCC after he appeared for questioning.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. So again, we're dealing with public media trials. We're told an ex-minister for power has been detained in connection with an alleged fraud. Now, again and again, and I will continue to say this is not the proper procedure. When they investigate in other countries, right? Because we don't get it right here. I have to refer to other countries where they get it right. There are discrete investigations, and almost all the time, the person investigated does not know he's being investigated. And by the time they're picking you up, be rest assured you're on your way to court. They've gotten their evidence, they've gotten a solid case against you, and they're ready to proceed. Now, it's all over the news that he's been picked up, he's been detained. What happens if at the end of this whole exercise, they realize they do not have enough to go to court with?
Is there a possibility that they do have, to go with before picking him up?
So there are two scenarios. So the first scenario is if they don't have enough evidence, what was all this about? How does that repair the damage to his reputation? Now, even if you do believe you have enough, why not pick him up and take him straight to court? You have your charges ready, arraign him in court, his lawyers will be there, serve the charges on him, let him enter his plea, and then if he pleads not guilty, then the matter is set down for trial. And then he will then have his opportunity to have his say in court. But each time Mr. A is picked up, Mrs. B is picked up, Mr. C is picked up, Mr. and Mrs. are picked up, all we hear is they're picked up. How many of those pickups end up in court? How many of those court cases end up in convictions? Those are the questions we ask. Every day we see that they're fighting the Yahoo boys. Yes, that's easy. That's low-hanging fruit. What's going to come out of this? And why did we have to know he was being arrested? Take the issue of two prominent Nigerians who were arrested within the last 4 years by foreign agencies for fraud-related activities. The two individuals, or the individuals in question, did not know they were being investigated until they were arrested. And the moment they were arrested, they were presented with the case against them. Believe it or not, all of them pleaded guilty. That's what happens when proper work is done. Put your house in order, get all your facts ready. As you're picking the person up, you're presenting the evidence, and immediately you go to court. Not you then pick the guy up, take the guy to court, and then apply for a long adjournment so that you can continue investigations. No. We can do better. This is Nigeria. We're brilliant people. We can do better and we should do better.
The famous Sena Climbs arguments. In the famous Sena Climbs, they do exactly what Mr. C said. As recently as yesterday in the US, There's this House of Reps member who was, accused. They've given him all his charges and it's being discussed right now. He is being, taken to court because he's been making all sorts of statements and they know exactly what they're charging him with. It's not even everything that they tend to charge the people with, but they charge them on the one that they believe can stick. And once the person sees it, often they start trying to find a way to settle the case out of court, if they can do that, if it's allowed. But here we seem to enjoy these media trials to show that we are working. Working on what?
All right, let's take some messages from WhatsApp. This is from DG. He says, listening to your analysis has got me thinking. It all points to massive corruption in the making. I look at my children and what the chances they have to survive in this country. I feel so sad for Nigeria and Nigerians as well. Duke has a question. Duke says, questions. Are the adults expected to tear gas themselves and their assailants, or do they need pepper spray?
The article clearly says tear gas, yeah.
Okay, Teddy says,
During the
during
cab
the cab
driver,
driver and rider pepper spray incident 2 years ago, we heard from the police that possession of pepper spray and tear gas was illegal. Has that changed?
now, I believe the police PRO specified at the time that pepper spray was illegal. It was considered some sort of weapon, but it's also been used widely as a method of defense, particularly for women. So yeah. All right, let's move on to the next story.
Yes, our next story comes from the Vanguard, and the Naira depreciated against the dollar on Wednesday, exchanging for 463 Naira to cover at the investors and exporters window.
Any surprise when we are taking on loans like a house on fire, when we are not as productive as we have every ability and capacity to be, when we are paying outsized remuneration to people who are sitting down in hallowed halls, as they're called, arguing among themselves about who will be the first to get the most, to do the least for the largest population in Africa? What factors exist that should have made the Naira appreciate against any currency on the surface of planet Earth? Under the management of the economy, as we've had it for at least the last 8 years, minus 19 or 18 days, it's no surprise that this arbitrary figure, even as arbitrary as it is, keeps declining. The Naira drops against the dollar because we have not maximized or even optimized our very eminent productive capacity. Like Mr. C said, we have the brains, we have the means, we have the land, we have the gumption, we have the effort, we have the hard-working capacity in spades, on display, all over the world, anywhere except within this geopolitical space. So it is not the Nigerian that is the problem, but the Nigeria as currently framed. And the problem is that notion of sharing. Every month, a governor knows that even without putting his state and his people to productive activity, he will send somebody to crawl to Abuja and get money and come back. That is why he doesn't feel the need to produce. Solution: every governor should be paid a percentage of what they generate inside their states and nothing else. You'll find we'll step up the game. The same thing should happen to all those members, National Assembly and the president. If they're not producing, they don't get paid. Guess what? Things will change fast.
All right, let's take one more message here really quickly, and this is from Gary Newton. He says, we don't want money, we need an enabling environment to thrive. And on that note, we've come to the end of Freshly Present Schools 98.1. Thank you to Mr. C and AB for joining us this morning.
Thank you. The pleasure
Thank
and
you.
privilege are always mine.
Thank you.
All right, Smooth 98.1. There's still more to come on the breakfast at 8:15. We'll go right into the break.